So, I've been AFK for a while. There's a few reasons why, but we'll get into that later. I'm here today to discuss the wildly divisive Justice League Incarnate issue number 4. To catch you up really fast, essentially after the events of Infinite Frontier, it's revealed that Darkseid is in a war with a variety of other factions to achieve the highest power possible, that power being that of the Great Darkness. This story here gives us both the origins of the totality of DC's creation and explains every single crisis event's purpose throughout all of DC's history. However, it's important to note that this entire history and interpretation comes from the character you see shown on the cover of Infinite Incarnate issue number 4, known as Dr. Multiverse. It's unsure how accurate her interpretation of events, history, or cosmology actually is. So, to start us off, essentially way back at the creation, like the origin of our entire creation, and I'm not talking just our specific multiverse, no, I'm talking about absolutely everything that is. There was once nothing but darkness, and in that darkness, there was a bright light that appeared, by an ever-growing light. Eventually, that light made the nothingness less, and that nothingness, its consciousness, the great darkness itself, screamed in response to that. And that scream created the flaw known as our specific DC creation's multiverse to be born. Thus, a major war continued in our specific creation between the forces of the Great Darkness and the agents of the light or the presence. In this specific flaw of a multiverse, it culminated in totality during the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. We get confirmation that the monitors were sent here by the light to maintain the light, or creation here, and that the anti-monitor was cursed exclusively by the Great Darkness to destroy all of what was. I thought that was Perpetua. This battle, however, shaped our verse into one singular universe, which primed us for an assault, or the major DC universe for an assault, by the Great Darkness. Despite everyone else's failures, Swamp Thing managed to convince the Great Darkness in Swamp Thing Volume 2 of his theory of evil and managed to save the day, and thus, an agreement was struck between the Hand of the Great Darkness and the Hand of the Light, aka the Hand of the Presence. However, the Great Darkness was so OG that he continued to curse and plague all of creation subconsciously while he slumbered after his agreement with the Presence. And all of these fuckos here have basically been unwitting pawns of his being used by the Great Darkness throughout all of history. All these idiots' attempts at destroying the main continuity creation caused another crisis event that resulted in our verse becoming an infinite multiverse once more. Worried that this expansion was a breach of the deal between the light and the dark, the forces of the light send the monitors to limit the ever-growing multiverse. They attempt to impede the awakening of the Great Darkness, but it's going to happen regardless. And Darkseid knew this, and had actively been trying to stop the Anti-Monitor, a known agent of the Great Darkness, for quite some time, including even the first crisis. Darkseid does this because he knows a higher truth, that the darkness, the Great Darkness, cares not for good or evil. Life or death, it wishes to destroy all. It simply represents destruction. And so Darkseid tried to create his own crisis and deal with the Great Darkness on his own terms, draw it out, but unfortunately, his plans didn't necessarily occur the way they wanted whenever they came to fruition because he was killed by Batman during that event. This action caused the multiverse to be wildly weakened, and the heroes managed to create a miracle machine to stop multiversal collapse, but the Great Darkness revealed itself in the form of Mandrak. The multiverse apparently has an immune system designed for beings trying to destroy it, and it turns out those happen to be superheroes. They managed to put a stop to Mandrak, as well as all of the heroes from Prime Earth seem to be spawned and are directly connected to the idea of a multiversal immune system. The Great Darkness, coming to this conclusion, even while slumbering I might add, decided to target them exclusively this time. The Great Darkness searches all of creation until he finds the perfect being to deal with them, and curses Dr. Manhattan to destroy the heroes' existences. This event became known as the Flashpoint Crisis. However, Superman mind hacks the fuck out of Manhattan during Doomsday Clock down the way with his Talk No Jutsu, and basically put an end to that shit. Turns out, Empty Hand is actually the hand that shook the Hand of Light, and is basically the perfect avatar of the Great Darkness itself. The Gentry, or the forces of Empty Hand, basically corrupted the agents of the light that were sent by the light to monitor our verse, that being the monitors, but they were limited by our heroes and quarantined to Universe 7, but even that did not stop the Great Darkness from expanding. This time, he pushed for the Metal Wars, or both the events of Dark Knight's Metal and Dark Knight's Death Metal, where it is revealed that the Great Darkness made Barbados, a demon of nightmares from the Dark Multiverse, an avatar of himself. Although he fails, his best avatar, the Bat Who Laughs, and later on down the road, Batman Hatton, fundamentally altered our multiverse forever with his actions by completely eradicating the majority of it. This included the removal of Earth Zero at the center of the multiverse, and began adding things that were not here before, such as Earth Omega, a world that is a part or a fraction of the Great Darkness itself, having been drawn and kind of being a polar opposite to our Earth. It also turns out Darkseid wants to control the Great Darkness so he can save all of creation from becoming nothingness, and of course he wants that power for himself. Now that we're caught up into the current moment with Dr. Multiverse's history lesson, Darkseid immediately proceeds to beat the shit out of the Justice League and take the hole from the multiverse that the Flash caused in Infinite Frontier from Dr. Multiverse, by force of course. It's quite hilarious to watch in real time. And immediately boom tubes his ass to fucking Earth 7 and rolls up on Empty Hand. And he's like, yo motherfucker, let's go, I ain't having your shit. And so Darkseid weaponizes that tear in the multiverse to strike at Empty Hand, who is the, as stated earlier, the hand of the Great Darkness. But it turns out that that was actually what Empty Hand needed to erect his oblivion machine, a device capable of destroying our multiverse, but then also the entire omniverse behind it. And as he pulls that thing unto himself, he says that tear out of his chest, he says his hand is no longer empty, and that Darkseid's purpose has essentially been used and goes to step on Darkseid. We even hear the sound effect of it. Obviously Darkseid's not dying there. Come on, bro, it's Darkseid. However, it also turns out that the Great Darkness can just flat out infect you and use you as like a puppet as well, as we see down the road whenever we see our Flashpoint Batman manage to just get absolutely like mind hacked, and he actually tries to start killing all the heroes he's been working with. And then of course the forces of the Great Darkness in the end, just a bunch of people rolling up with all sorts of darkness rolling out of them. So it's very interesting to where they're going. So in conclusion, we have every solution we could ever want whenever it comes to DC's origins, to a certain extent. Feels kind of weird we had just entirely left out anything whatsoever to do with the hands. Honestly, it feels like kind of a soft reboot of their lore, let alone Perpetua's in general, because she feels like she gets the hard reset. And like, unless you want to say exclusively that scream that the Great Darkness did manage to mind hacks Perpetua into creating our verse with anti-crisis energies the second it happened. But I mean, that would be a bit of a stretch until we get a little bit more confirmed there. I mean, Dr. Multiverse could be full of shit as far as any of us know, but if anything, I bet the Cosmic Armor Supermans are mad as fuck that Cosmic Armor Superman is not as big of a boy. I mean, this new Cosmology definitely says that he is not top tier. He basically couldn't even make it into the Overvoid, which is big rip. The monitors are also confirmed as agents of the light here, which means they definitely aren't presence level, which is hilarious to think about. There's so much confirmed here in just the opening parts of this origin, in all honesty, and it's kind of brought together in a really nice way. It does kind of shit on Perpetua in the hands, sorta, but I might be able to make sense of that in the future. And I think I'm going to focus a little bit more hardcore on a lot more of the cosmological side of things from here on. So get ready, guys. I'm going to start hopefully dropping videos on that. I apologize about the lack of videos recently. Life's been memeing. But I guess until next time, Lanterns. Yo, real quick, last minute editor's note. Check out this image up top. It is of the brand new DC Dark Crisis event that is happening in June, I believe on the 10th. Definitely something worth checking out, and I'm being mind blown by the few amount of panels they have dropped for us already. Yo, look at this. Why is Spectre hanging out with all these villains? This doesn't even make sense. Like, Darkseid's fighting against all those dudes, and he's hanging out with them. Like, what's going on with that? Maybe I'll make a video on that down the way. But until next time, later, Lanterns.